was 955 AD. In the previous year, Nikephoros Phokas failed in his campaign to dislodge Sayf ad-Dawla from his border defenses. The old general lost his strategic advantage and his youngest son. It was the time for a new generation to step in and take charge. And so they did. Nikephoros Phokas was born around 912 AD to his father Vardas and a noblewoman from the Malinos clan. He grew up on the Phokas family estate in Cappadocia, together with his two younger brothers, Leon and Konstantinos. Cappadocia was a tough and rugged land that bred tough and rugged men, and the three boys were no exception. Their upbringing was quite different from that of capital city boys. From a very early age, they learned to ride a horse and swing a sword. Their idea of fun was not a trip around the city's brothels or watching a race in the hippodrome, but hunting and scouting in the wilderness around the vast Phokas estate. Nikephoros was the most serious of the brothers. A brooding and stubborn youth, he fully embraced his duties as the future head of the Phokas family. His role models growing up were his father and his maternal uncle, a revered monk, Michail Malinos. From his father, the strategos of Armenia Khan, Nikephoros learned the ways of war. Vardas's daughter was married to a nephew of Ioannis Kourkouas, who was the domestikos at the time. It is safe to assume that all three brothers were recruited into the army of the East as soon as they came of age. Under the tutelage of the legendary general and their own father, the brothers learned how to follow orders and how to give them. When Vardas was appointed the domestikos, each of the brothers was promoted to a regional command, and Nikephoros got the most prestigious and the most demanding of those. He became the strategos of Anatolikon. From his uncle, Nikephoros learned about the Christian faith. Michail Malinos was a revered monk. His worldly name was Manuel. As a young man, he fled the capital for a monastic life on Mount Kiminas. Against the wishes of his parents, Manuel got tonsured and adopted a monastic name Michail or Michael. He spent 5 days of every week alone in a remote cave in prayer and contemplation, returning to his monastery only to receive communion. Nikephoros admired his uncle's dedication to the faith. He often visited him in his hermitage, where they discussed the aspects of Christianity and what it meant to live a righteous life. Nikephoros' early life had moments when he really needed the guidance and counsel of his saintly uncle. The future domestikos married young to a girl from the Malinos family, and their marriage produced a boy whom they named Vardas. Unfortunately, both the mother and the child died before the boy grew up. In his mourning, Nikephoros swore off eating meat, and some say that he took the vow of chastity. The young general took inspiration from his devoted uncle, and might have been inclined to a monastic life himself, but soon his worldly duties called upon him. The emperor himself tasked Nikephoros to secure the eastern frontiers, and the general would never shirk such a responsibility. Previously, we saw how Sayf ad-Dawla reasserted his position on his side of the Taurus Mountains and restored the border defenses. These fortresses could serve as the base for the future reconquest of Malatin and Theodosopolis. The first order of business for Nikephoros was to deal with this situation. So far, the Romans were very successful at small-scale warfare. Leon Phokas, for example, was an absolute genius when it came to raids, ambushes, and surprise attacks. However, Sayf ad-Dawla was getting the better of them in pitched battles time after time. Emperor Constantine might have been content with simply destroying the Arab border defenses at Marash, Adata, and Samosata once again. But Nikephoros was thinking ahead. He wanted to punish the Emir of Aleppo for the death of his younger brother, and defeat him on his home turf. To make the eastern borders truly secure, he would need to not simply destroy the walls of those border cities, but to conquer them. This meant long campaigns further east than the Romans dared to venture in the last century. Going on such campaigns with untrained soldiers would have been suicidal. Nikephoros needed a reliable and disciplined army. With these goals in mind, the domestikos developed his military doctrine. In 955, he started recruitment and training of the army that he planned to eventually take into the Arab land, to extinguish the flames of jihad for good. In the book that he would write 15 years later, Nikephoros described the force that he was building. The bulk of it was the heavy infantry. These were men recruited from the Empire and from Armenia, large in stature and no more than 40 years of age. They were trained to fight with swords, axes and maces, as well as to properly use their shields and maneuver with the spear. They were supported by the archers, javeliners and slingers, often composed of mercenaries. The tallest of the heavy infantrymen were the Menevallati. Every one of them carried an extra long lance. During the battle, the Menevallati were dispatched to where the enemy cavalry was going to crash into the formation. The Byzantine footmen were not professional soldiers. They were sometimes mercenaries, but most oftenly simply local levies. The cavalry was another matter. Some of these were mercenaries as well, but the main force was the elite of the Roman military. These were the members of Tagmata, the imperial guard, called to the frontier to assist the domesticos. And the most prestigious between them were the heavily armored cataphracts. If the infantry was the shield of the Roman army, and the cavalry was its sword, then the cataphracts were the tip of the sword. Draped in full armor from the rider's head to the horse's hooves, they were the ones who tipped the scales of battles. Nikephoros understood how difficult it is to coordinate a 15,000-strong host on the battlefield, so he made sure that they always knew what to do. His priority for the infantry were not intricate maneuvers, but maintaining morale. If the footmen won't break, then the cavalry would do the job. Domesticos arranged his infantry formation in the same way he arranged his military camp, as a square. The soldiers who lived together in the tents would be standing shoulder to shoulder on the battlefield. The square was made up of 12 units of heavy infantry, with missile troops inside the formation. There were gaps between the units for the cavalry to maneuver in and out of the square. If the going gets tough and the enemy heavy cavalry is charging into the Roman infantry, the Menevallati with their heavy lances are given the signal to reinforce the line where the impact is going to happen. If the Roman cavalry is driven from the battlefield and needs to regroup, they would wheel into the gaps in the heavy infantry line, where they can do so safely under the cover of archers' fire. The javeliners would stand ready to plug the gap and face the enemy cavalry if they tried to pursue and disrupt the formation. The cavalry charge was the general's most fearsome weapon. He strove to perfect this tactic. Nikephoros taught his horsemen to pray together before a decisive charge. After calling upon the Lord to strengthen their resolve, they were to advance on the enemy in perfect unison, at the prescribed pace, without making a slightest commotion or sound. No battle cries, charging ahead of the formation, or steering to look for gaps in the enemy line would be tolerated. The horsemen needed the perfect discipline to ride as one and strike in a single blow. Nikephoros learned not only from his friends, but from his enemies as well. Sayf's victory over Waldetoft's Phokas in the Battle of Marash must have made an impression. In that battle, Sayf's cavalry went straight for the Byzantine general and scattered the Roman ranks by making him flee for his life. Nikephoros wanted to emulate this in his battles. While the infantry would be standing firm in the face of enemy's attacks, the cavalry, led by the cataphracts, would charge towards the enemy commander, decapitate their force, and send them running back towards the Arabian deserts. But before any of this could happen, this mighty host needed to be trained. Right now, it was just a bunch of undisciplined mercenaries and extra bold peasants, with a couple of decently experienced soldiers thrown in between. The problem was that Sayf ad-Dawla wasn't going to sit idly waiting for Nikephoros to build up his army. He set his sights on the reconquest of Melitene, and someone needed to dissuade him from it, while the domesticus was busy elsewhere. Luckily, Nikephoros had two men who were perfect for this job. Nikephoros' promotion to the office of domesticos wasn't the only change in military leadership that took place that year. His nephew, Ioannis Thimiskis, took over the command of the theme of Mesopotamia from his grandfather, Theophilos Kourkouas. He was eager to prove his merit, so instead of waiting for Sayf to attack, he took his own army on the offensive, raiding southeast towards the city of Amida. Sayf countered with an attack of his own, looking to devastate the surroundings of Melitene and preempt Ioannis from attacking Amida. Upon hearing the news of Arab raiders ravaging the Roman settlements, Ioannis took his army back north and garrisoned the mountain passes which Sayf was likely to use to get back home. By a stroke of fate, the Arab general took a path that brought him face to face with the strategos himself. Under a torrential rain, the two armies clashed and the numerically superior Arab force was victorious. Ioannis was struck multiple times, but he cared more about the bruises to his pride than to his body. But Ioannis wasn't the only capable Roman general on the frontier. While his nephew was keeping Sayf distracted, Leon Phokas fell upon the forces of Nasser al-Dawla's son Muhammad. In one of his brilliant surprise attacks, he crushed the disorganized Arabs and captured Sayf's nephew. Next year, Sayf went on another offensive. This time, Nikephoros countered by ordering a naval attack on Tarsus. The Byzantine fleet destroyed the Arab navy, and the Marines landed in the harbor and burned the suburbs of the city. Sayf's Tarsian contingent went back to Cilicia to defend their homes, and his campaign had to be abandoned. Nikephoros then took the field himself and sacked the city of Hadath, destroying one of those critical border fortresses that Sayf spent so much effort rebuilding. The treasures taken from Hadath were just an appetizer for the triumph in honor of successes in the east. The high-ranking Muslim prisoners were the main spectacle. In the culmination of the show, Emperor Constantine put his foot on the neck of Sayf's nephew to a roaring ovation from the crowd. Sayf was gathering force for another campaign, but Nikephoros was one step ahead of him. He bribed some of Sayf's Turkish forces. When the Hamdanid Emir learned of this planned betrayal, he ordered his troops to massacre the Turkish contingent. Without enough men to even launch an invasion, he had to return to Aleppo empty-handed once again. Emperor Constantine was so far more than satisfied with his new appointments, but he knew not to trust anyone blindly. In 958, he dispatched his eunuch advisor, Vasil Lekapenos, partly to assist the Phokas, but partly to keep an eye on them. The brothers were up to their usual routine at the time, drilling their armies and planning the future operations. To keep the Hamdanids busy, Nikephoros let Ioannis Zimisces off the leash. The young strategos captured the fortress of Dara and scored a crushing victory over an army led by one of Sayf's favorite lieutenants, the Circassian Nadia. The investment in heavy cavalry was starting to pay off big time. Zimisces then linked up with the eunuchs' forces and stormed the city of Samosata, destroying its walls, and then laid siege to a nearby fortress of Raban. Finally, Sayf himself rode out to confront him. The battle was hard fought, but the cataphracts won the day once again. Ioannis crushed Sayf's cavalry and took his cousin and court poet Abu Firas as prisoner. Another victory, another Hamdanid prisoner, and another triumph for Emperor Constantine and the Byzantine generals. The same year, Leon Phokas traveled west to repel Magyar invasion of the Balkans, and as 959 rolled in, the empire's borders were as secure as ever. Sayf's fortresses were in ruins, and the danger to Palatine was a thing of the past. The Romans could start planning the final blow against the Hamdanid Emirate, but there was another matter which Constantine wanted to address first. The Emirate of Crete was established in the 820s, when the exiles from Andalusia wrested control of the island from the Byzantine forces. Since its inception, the Emirate was a huge thorn in the side of the empire. The island controlled the entrance to the Aegean, which allowed the Muslim pirates to raid the shores of both Greece and Anatolia, and disrupt the maritime trade. The last two emperors of the Macedonian dynasty had been especially irritated by the existence of this pirate haven. Leo the Wise suffered a huge blow to his prestige when a Greek renegade admiral, Leo of Tripoli, used Crete as his base to sack Thessaloniki, the empire's second largest city. Leo's expedition to retake Crete ended in disaster, sullying his overall decent record. Constantine also failed in his first attempt in 949, but back then he was unable to put all of the empire's might to the task and risk leaving the frontiers undefended. Now he had more room to maneuver. In early 959, the emperor ordered a build-up of the Roman navy and entrusted his eunuch minister Iosif Vringas to oversee this effort. Sadly, Constantine would not live to welcome Crete back into the imperial fold. In November the same year, the 54-year-old emperor died in his sleep. The operation, however, continued uninterrupted. Constantine was succeeded by his 21-year-old son, Romanos, who was more than happy to keep his father's appointments in place. Veringas ensured that the ships were built in time, while Nikephoros mustered an invasion force. In 960, the Domesticos and his massive 30,000-strong host sailed for Crete. His well-trained soldiers quickly disembarked using rams and drove off the Muslim force sent to disrupt the landing. They established a beachhead, and Nikephoros sent them into the island to harass the population and forced them to flee into the Cretan capital of Chandax. Domesticos initially planned to take the city with a quick assault. He sent the Strategos of Thrakision inland with a small detachment to scout and gather supplies, but careless soldiers got drunk. The battalion was ambushed and almost completely annihilated, with only a few men surviving to tell the tale. Nikephoros then decided to settle for a siege and wait for another opportunity to storm the city. From captured Arab soldiers, he learned that there was a relief army gathering in the countryside. Under cover of night, using local Christians as guides, Nikephoros took his army inland and surrounded the hill where the Arab army was mustering. The blowing trumpets dazed sleepy Muslim soldiers, and they fell to the Roman attack with little resistance. Domesticos ordered the heads of the fallen to be gathered and brought to the camp. In an intimidation move worthy of a fantasy villain, Nikephoros ordered the severed heads to be catapulted into the besieged city. But the morale of the Arab defenders held. They repelled the following assault, and Nikephoros had to settle for a prolonged siege. Chandax was located in an inherently defensible position. 700 years later, it would become the spot of the second longest siege in human history, that lasted 21 years. Nikephoros didn't have 21 years. He didn't even have 1 year. Before the blockade was established, the Emir of Crete sent calls for help to the Ikhshidid and Fatimid caliphs in North Africa. Fatimid Caliph answered the call and sent an ultimatum to the Emperor Romanos to lift the siege. He was planning to sail to the relief of the island in May next year if his conditions would not be met. Luckily for Nikephoros, the defenses of the city were strong, but not insurmountable. The walls were tall, but a big portion of them was not made of stone, but of tightly packed earth. During the unusually cold winter of 960 to 961, the Roman soldiers were building siege engines more formidable than the ones they used in the first assault. As soon as the weather allowed, Nikephoros ordered the preparation for a renewed assault. In early March, the city bombardment resumed. Phokas ordered an attack on the gates with the battering ram. The attempt was repelled, but served its purpose as a feint. While the Muslim defenders focused on the ram, the Byzantine sappers dug under the wall and placed the wooden beams to keep the wall standing before the moment comes. After they cleared the tunnel, they set fire to the beams. As these fragile props collapsed, they took a huge section of the wall down with them. Byzantine forces streamed into the breach and quickly overran the line of defenders. After a couple hours of desperate street fighting, the city fell. The soldiers who spent a long freezing winter in the camp had no mercy for the inhabitants of Chandax. The next 3 days were spent looting and pillaging. Emir Abdulaziz and his son Al-Numan were dispatched to Constantinople as captives. After 140 years in Muslim hands, the island of Crete was back in the imperial fold. Back at the capital, it was time for a celebration. In a well-deserved triumph, Nikephoros displayed the treasures of Crete to the elated crowd. The son of the Emir of Crete was so impressed by the Roman capital that he converted to Christianity and enrolled in the imperial guard. Romanos II's reign was off to a great start. He and Nikephoros have honored his father's final wish and could now turn their attention back to the east, to the Arab frontier, where the victorious general still had some scores to settle.